You apologize for things that aren't your fault. You walk into a room and immediately scan everyone's faces to gauge their mood. You feel guilty for having needs. If any of this sounds familiar, there might be a reason. Growing up with a narcissistic parent doesn't just affect your childhood. It rewires your entire nervous system, shapes how you see yourself, and influences every relationship you'll ever have. Today, we're going to walk through 8 specific signs that you were raised by a narcissist, backed by trauma psychology and clinical research. But here's what's important. Recognizing these patterns isn't about blaming your parents or staying stuck in victimhood. It's about understanding why you're the way you are, so you can finally start healing. Some of these signs might hit hard. You might see yourself in every single one. And if you do, I want you to know you're not broken, you're not too sensitive, and you're not imagining things. Your experiences were real, and they left a mark. But that mark doesn't have to define the rest of your life. Let's begin. First, let's establish what we're talking about. Narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is a clinical diagnosis characterized by a grandiose sense of self-importance, lack of empathy, and a deep need for excessive attention and admiration. But when a parent has these traits, whether clinically diagnosed or not, the child becomes an extension of the parent's ego rather than a separate person with their own needs and identity. Dr. Carol McBride, author of Will I Ever Be Good Enough?, explains that narcissistic parents see their children as objects to regulate their own self-esteem. When the child succeeds, the parent feels validated. When the child struggles or asserts independence, the parent feels threatened and often responds with criticism, withdrawal, or rage. This creates what psychologists call conditional love. The child learns that love and acceptance aren't given freely. They must be earned through performance, compliance, and meeting the parent's emotional needs. This fundamentally disrupts healthy attachment and creates lasting psychological patterns. The child's nervous system becomes wired for survival in an unpredictable emotional environment, and those survival mechanisms continue long into adulthood, even when they're no longer needed. Sign number 1, you apologize excessively, even when you've done nothing wrong. You bump into a chair and say sorry to the furniture. Someone steps on your foot, you apologize. You have a different opinion. You preface it with, "I'm sorry, but..." This comes from growing up in an environment where you were blamed for things beyond your control. When a narcissistic parent is upset, they project that onto the child. You learn that apologizing could sometimes de-escalate their anger or mood, so your nervous system developed an automatic apologize first response as a protective mechanism. Sign number 2, you have extreme difficulty receiving genuine compliments. When someone praises you, you immediately deflect, minimize, or feel uncomfortable. You might say, "Oh, it was nothing," or "anyone could have done it," or you redirect the attention to someone else. Why? Because narcissistic parents often couldn't tolerate their child outshining them. If you receive praise from others, your parent might have diminished your achievement, made it about themselves, or punished you for seeking attention. You learn that being acknowledged feels dangerous because it historically led to negative consequences. So now, even genuine recognition triggers discomfort in your nervous system. Sign number 3, hypervigilance. You constantly read the emotional temperature of every room you enter. You scan faces, analyze tone of voice, watch body language obsessively. You can detect the slightest shift in someone's mood, often before they're aware of it themselves. This is because you grew up needing to predict your parents' emotional state to stay safe. Was mom in a good mood, or were you walking into a minefield? You develop what trauma therapists call fawn response, where you become hyper-aware of others' needs and emotions to preemptively manage them and avoid conflict or rejection. Sign number 4, you feel like you have to earn love. You don't believe people could love you just for existing. You think you need to be useful, helpful, accomplished, or perfect to deserve affection and attention. In relationships, you overgive, overfunction, and exhaust yourself trying to prove your worth. This stems from never receiving unconditional love as a child. Your parent affection was transactional. You got warmth when you met their needs or made them look good, and coldness or rage when you didn't. You internalize the message that your inherent self isn't enough, that love must be purchased through performance and self-sacrifice. Sign number 5, You have difficulty identifying your own needs, preferences, and desires. Someone asks what you want for dinner, and you genuinely don't know. You struggle to make decisions about your own life. You might not even know what your favorite color is or what makes you happy. This is because narcissistic parents don't see their children as separate individuals with valid internal experiences. Your feelings and needs were either ignored, dismissed, or treated as inconvenient. Over time, you learn to suppress your inner world entirely. You disconnected from your own emotional signals because expressing them was met with punishment or neglect. Sign number 6. You consistently attract or stay in relationships where you play the savior or fixer role. You're drawn to people who are struggling, emotionally unavailable, or need rescuing. You feel most comfortable when you're needed, when you're solving someone else's problems. This pattern comes from childhood, where your value is determined by how well you manage your parents' emotional needs. You became the family therapist, the emotional support animal, the one who kept everything together. That role felt like purpose, like proof of your worth. So in adulthood, you unconsciously recreate that dynamic, seeking relationships where you can replay that familiar role, even though it's exhausting and one-sided. Sign number 7. You have an extremely harsh inner critic. The voice in your head is brutal, unforgiving, and relentless. You criticize yourself in ways you would never speak to another person. You replay mistakes for years. You hold yourself to impossible standards and beat yourself up when you inevitably fall short. This inner critic is actually your parents' voice that you've internalized. Narcissistic parents often use shame and criticism as control mechanisms. They pointed out your flaws constantly, made you feel like you could never do anything right. That external criticism became your internal dialogue. Your brain internalized that voice as a way to try to prevent future criticism. If you criticize yourself first and harshly enough, maybe you can avoid their disapproval. Sign number 8. You have a paralyzing fear of being selfish or narcissistic yourself. You're terrified of having needs, setting boundaries, or prioritizing yourself because you're afraid it makes you like your parent. You'd rather suffer than risk being perceived as self-centered. Ironically, this fear is proof you're not a narcissist. Actual narcissists don't worry about being narcissistic. But you were taught that having needs equals being bad, that self-care equals selfishness. Your parent may have even accused you of being selfish when you tried to assert yourself, further cementing that fear.
So if you recognize yourself in this size, what now? First understand that healing from narcissistic abuse is possible, but it is not linear and it takes time. Professional therapy is crucial, specifically if someone trained in complex trauma and narcissistic abuse. Look for therapies who specialize in CPTSD or attachment trauma. Two powerful healing modalities, internal family systems therapy and EMDR have shown remarkable results for this type of trauma. Second, reparenting yourself. This means learning to give yourself the unconditional acceptance, validation, and care you didn't receive as a child. It means noticing when your inner critic speaks and consciously responding with compassion instead. Third, boundaries. You will likely need to establish firm boundaries with your narcissistic parent, which might mean limited contact or in some cases no contact. This is the cruel, it's self-preservation. Fourth, find your community. Connect with others who have had similar experiences, whether through support groups, online communities, or trusted friends. You need to hear that you're not alone and that your experiences are valid. And finally, give yourself permission to grieve. Grieve the childhood you deserved but didn't get. Grieve the parent you needed but never had. That grief is part of healing. Before we close, a critical disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health care. If you recognize these signs yourself, please reach out to a licensed therapist who can provide personalized support and diagnosis if needed. Not everyone who displays these traits had a narcissistic parent. Trauma can come from many sources. And not every difficult parent is a narcissistic narcissist. Personality disorders are complex clinical diagnoses. The goal here is to label your parents or get stuck in blame. It's to understand your patterns so you can help them. Also know this. Recognizem these patterns is actually a sign of incredible strength in the self-awareness. The fact that you're watching this, that you're seeking to understand yourself better, means you're already on the path of healing. You're breaking generational cycles. You're choosing to do the hard work of recovery. That takes courage. So wherever you are in your healing journey, whether you're just beginning to recognize these patterns or you've been in therapy for years, you want you to know. You deserve it better. Your feelings are valid, and healing is possible. You are not your trauma. You are not doomed to repeat these patterns. You can build a life where you feel safe, worthy, and free. Thank you for watching, and please take care of yourself.